In a complex, fragile, and fragmented world, innovations and technology can support peace building. Continuous development of peace processes requires a wider range of tools and solutions. Technology has a key role in supporting and supplementing other peace activities. With Peacetech, we can increase situation awareness by gathering and visualizing conflict data. We can offer tools to locals and international organizations to better plan and monitor peace efforts. We can build solutions to reduce or prevent violence on the grassroots level through education. When technology is used in conflict-prone and fragile areas, ethical concerns are pressing. This sets a new array of design principles for technology. While services today are mostly designed with user-centric tools, Peacetech requires a society-centric approach. Peacetech enhances analysis and understanding of conflict. It creates practical tools to avoid and solve them. Peacetech has the potential to transform conflict-affected communities. Finland has a strong expertise in tech and peace work. The low hierarchies of Finnish society enable seamless cooperation between the public and private sector. This allows officials, organizations, and companies to create comprehensive solutions with a holistic approach. That's why Finland has an outstanding setting to become the hub of Peacetech for the rest of the world. Splush brings together experts in business, technology, and peace building to exchange ideas and drive development in Peacetech. Welcome.
Mr. Assistant Secretary Hochschild, friends and colleagues, I am honored to be able to welcome you today. My name is Mekri. I am the Executive Director of SaferGlobe. SaferGlobe is engaged with creating criteria, thinking, concepts and standardization from the peace research side to create peace technology. Peace technology is technology that aims to reduce violence and the need for violence. Today we are joined by very distinguished guests, Madam President and Mr. Hochschild, but we are also joined by amazing people in the audience. We have here representation from 3 Finnish ministries, at least, from civil society, peace researchers, startups, and business people. And we even had a 70-person wait list. Yes, it has been an amazingly successful event thus far.
So, Madam President Halonen, Mr. Undersecretary, Assistant Secretary General Hochschild, dear friends, the conflict and the costs of conflicts are annually in excess of $10 trillion. All those conflicts are human infected. We humans cause those conflicts, and we humans are also the only ones who can solve and mend those conflicts. Technology is being used by each, at least the vast majority of everyone on the planet, those who cause the conflicts and those who suffer from the conflicts. When we founded Funzi Mobile Learning Service 4 years ago, there were 3 goals that we set. We want to deliver learning and education to give everyone on the planet a meaningful job, enable them to lead healthy lives, and also an end to all wars. Splush is here today. You are here today to understand that humanity and humane are the only things that are important. Technology can greatly enhance the way the world works, and it's up to us to create that better world today.
President Halonen, Assistant Secretary General Hochschild, dear guests, My name is Tuomas Paasonen, and I lead the Peacetech initiatives here at Futurize. We are a technology company, but it's never just about technology for us. It's about finding solutions for problems worth solving. I believe that there's an enormous potential in technology for peace building. But yet again, it's not about the machines. It is us humans finding the right tools and methods to build solutions, to find solutions for conflicts. I warmly welcome all of you here to our headquarters and hope you will enjoy the discussions ahead. And now it's time to start our program. It's my honor to give the stage to United Nations Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Hochschild.
Madam President, dear organizers, let me say at the outset what a tremendous pleasure it is to be here today and to be at this hub of innovation and progressive thinking. Peacetech, it sounds good, but I have to say from a global perspective, from where I sit in New York at the United Nations, we're asking ourselves whether those two words, peace and technology, peace and new technology, are friends or enemies. And I have to say, I think globally the jury is still out. I think that's a key question of our times. In the Western world, conflict, at least traditional conflict, seems to be largely something of the past. But I'm afraid in much of the world that is not the case. Today we have more wars happening since any time since the end of the Cold War. Today more wars are happening since any time since the Cold War. Today more civilians are dying and being displaced and being forced to be refugees since any time since 2005. Today, the number of actors in individual conflicts is higher than ever before. In Syria 6 years ago, we at the UN counted about 6 conflict actors. Today, we count over 1,000. And with the multiplication of conflict actors and with the polarization of the globe, our ability to resolve conflicts has grown much more difficult. So not only do we have more conflicts, not only are more people dying in conflict, not only is there more displacement from conflict, but those very conflicts are becoming virtually impossible to resolve. So we need to change something. And we need to change something because conflict, even remote conflicts, in today's world don't stay remote, even for Western population. We see that in many indicators. We see that in immigration. Immigration which now, slightly strangely to those of us who are not Europeans, has become the dominant theme and a very polarizing theme in European politics. Migration is a result largely of conflict, migration, refugee flows, displacement. We see that in terrorism. There is no better breeding ground for international terrorist occupations than territories where the rule of law has disappeared as a result of conflict. Another is in the growing impact and the growing scale of illicit economies, people trafficking, drugs that are more powerful than ever. I worked in Colombia. In Colombia, thanks to decades of ongoing conflict, the illicit economy, which was built up of extortion, drugs, trafficking, illegal mining, was an economy the equivalent size of the tourism sector. And that's a huge drain on development resources. It fuels corruption. It undermines the rule of law, which in turn facilitates the continuation of conflict. So those have knock-on effects on our countries, I mean on Western countries that cannot be ignored. So we urgently need solutions, and there we have to turn to new technology to help. I talked about the intractability of conflict. The problem today is that once conflict starts, it lasts. So the best thing to do is to focus on prevention, and that's very much at the heart of the vision of the new Secretary General. And that means detecting where conflict threatens to break out. And there new technology can help. Data monitoring of social media use. The use of big data can monitor speech patterns, can monitor language use in the media, in social media, to see where the sorts of polarization and tensions are emerging that are likely to lead to outbreaks of violence. And then hopefully one can take measures quickly. And one can do that, for example, around elections, to see elections have become more and more a source not of consolidating peace, but often of leading to new conflict. One can look at the sort of language being used to take preventive measures. So their big data analysis can help a lot in early warning, which should facilitate early action. And once conflict has broken out, the use of remote sensing, remote monitoring tools, whether it's drones or satellite imagery, can help trace what population movements to provide humanitarian aid faster to those who need it, but also to monitor the activities of armed groups. I worked in Central African Republic, where the peacekeeping mission, which was 12,000 strong, trying to cover a territory the size of France and Belgium combined, with 50 kilometers of road, of paved road in a territory that size, 12,000 people. It was impossible. So we used drones and remote sensing tools to try and monitor where the armed groups were moving, where they were likely to come into confrontation, to try and deploy peacekeepers there rapidly, to have a preventive impact on violence, in particular violence against civilians. So that's another area where they can help. I think they can also help in peace processes. In Colombia, the UN worked with the government. The peace process was offshore. It was in Cuba. And it was kept hermetically sealed from outsiders because the sense was the previous peace processes had been a sort of circus with too many involved, which had slowed down agreement. So the government and the rebels, the FARC, were very anxious to keep it quite cut off. But the danger of doing that is that you end up with peace negotiations that are out of touch with what people want from peace. And if you have peace negotiations that are not built on popular consultation, you may get the signature of a peace agreement, but if it doesn't address what is of concern to people, it's unlikely to last. And there we used the internet to solicit views from a very broad spectrum of public opinion to feed into the peace process. And it was very successful. I mean, we had the agreements were based over 60% on views that we solicited from a huge cross-section of Colombian society. So there, what new technology allowed for made a big difference in the durability of what was agreed in the peace process. We see other uses. I mean, I was in Turkey recently, where Turkey and Finland lead a group on mediation at the UN, and we heard from Ukrainian experts how they've set up virtual, in the Donbas region of Ukraine, virtual negotiations via social media, where the parties can't actually come together physically. They've managed to create a virtual room for negotiation. So that's obviously also a great innovation that can help serve the cause of peace. But as I say, technology is not universally supportive of peace. And sadly, there are many counter examples where new technologies represent a threat. And I would say the first is the digital realm has created a whole new dimension for conflict. Many say that in the Second World War, up until that point in history, over the past 2,000, 4,000 years of history, all wars had been fought in two places, on earth and on sea. And for the first time in the Second World War, a third dimension was added, in the air. And today, aerial conflict is often decisive in conflict. Well, now we have a fourth dimension, the digital realm. And we see that. And more states are resorting to that. There was, I can't remember which organization leaked the data, but there was a company in a modern European state that was producing software, and this was war tech, not peace tech, that was producing software for countries to hack and launch cyber attacks on other countries, and doing a tremendous business. And someone leaked their client list, and it turned out that there were over 90 countries that had purchased this software. So there are at least 90 countries out there who've purchased software that is explicitly designed to attack other countries' networks. And of course, there have been a few high-profile cases, WannaCry, NotPetya, where there were very hostile attacks. And the problem was that in that area, there are two differences to traditional areas of warfare. First of all, it's much easier to be an attacker than a defender. In traditional warfare, the person defending, on the whole, has the advantage over the attacker. In cyber conflict, it's the other way around. Secondly, the consequences are unknown, both in the case of WannaCry and NotPetya. The worst damage, most people agree, was unintended. It was not the direct target. But with the internet, and many of you know this better than me, being made up of at least 60,000 networks, nobody quite knows when they're attacking A, whether A will actually be hurt or the pain won't actually be inflicted on D, C, X, Y. So the danger of completely unintended consequences from this new potential for cyber warfare is incredible and quite concerning. Another aspect I'd like to highlight is that the very basic one, that technology has also facilitated new weapons, not just the refinement of further weapons, but a whole new form of weaponry. And I'm thinking of lethal autonomous weapons, which before were the subject of science fiction, but now exist even if they haven't yet been deployed in conflict, i.e., weapons that can kill with no need for human agency. They can be programmed to move into a place and get rid of anything human, or used in a more targeted way. I mean, the Secretary General has called for a complete ban on such weapons, but the technology is there, and the state, and this is the concern both with cyber warfare and with the invention of such new weapon systems, the state of international cooperation, the state of understanding of international law to contain these threats is very much in its infancy, and not at all up to the height, up to the threat that such developments contain. And that is a major concern. There's a big debate as to within states as to how far international law applies. But even those who agree that international applies in full will have a hard time saying exactly how it applies, because obviously those who wrote international law, those who drafted international humanitarian law, the law of war, did not contemplate the possibility of something called cyber warfare or lethal autonomous weapons. So we have a struggle there to get cooperation on an international scale to contain these threats, and I'll come back to that. But the third threat I want to highlight, which I think has become more and more apparent, but is also perhaps the most difficult one to grapple with, is the relationship of social media platforms to conflict. And I think we've all been taken unpleasantly by surprise when social media first emerged, and especially, it emerged thanks to bright, young, idealistic people who had the best of intentions, and the thought was that this was going to promote democracy, promote understanding, create greater empathy across cultures, across peoples. And 10 or 15 years on, we're seeing more and more that it has the reverse effect. I mean, it's been well documented in Myanmar how the country getting hold of social media went hand in hand with an increase in inter-ethnic conflict and violence, went hand in hand with the spread of hate speech. We've seen, even in the most developed democracies, how social media has led to less understanding, greater polarization, less social coherence, and more new tribalism, for lack of a better word. And so what has happened that social media has now become a force, a source of misinformation, and a source of hatred. And this isn't just in Myanmar, or Libya is another example. It's also, it's been documented how in Germany, social media, sometimes allegedly manipulated from outside, so combined with possibly state-led cyber infiltration, led to greater xenophobia and more attacks on migrants. And I think we're not at all ready or haven't got the means yet to come to terms with those threats. So I think what this illustrates is that, like technologies in the past, like the invention of gunpowder, like the splitting of the atom, like the journey to outer space, new technology can both generate tremendous potential opportunities for progress, for development, for bringing people out of poverty, but it can also be used to fuel and echo and further the worst in human nature. But I do think, unlike inventions in the past, we've been slow at coming to terms with the downside. And I think we need new approaches. The old approaches, I mean, in the case of the splitting of the atom, the UN was very quick to come together to set up the international IAEA, the Atomic Energy Organization. It was very quick to draft a series of conventions, likewise with the Convention on Outer Space, which helps keep outer space for peaceful use. The UN was quick to come together to do that. We have not been quick to come together to address the threats of new technologies in the digital sphere. But we can't have the same approaches. The developments are happening too quickly, and the developments, unlike previous inventions, are not state-driven. They're driven by the private sector. So if we want to bring about change, we need new approaches that are much more nimble, much faster, and incorporate both state actors and the industry and civil society in a way that is not the most traditional way of the UN acting. So the Secretary General, who very much is aware of these threats and wants to serve the international community in addressing them, has convened a high-level panel on digital cooperation to look at what are the forms for these particular challenges that are the most likely to help address the unintended consequences and the malicious uses in a meaningful way. But it will require, I mean, the formulas, the panel will report back in spring next year, but it's very clear that the formulas will require innovation, cooperation between the public and the private sphere, a nimbleness and a speed. And there, I think, we have a lot to learn from Finland. We have a lot to learn from the way that Finland is addressing these challenges, and that's also one reason I'm with you today. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jarmo Sareva. I'm the newly minted Ambassador for Innovation at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. It's a new position, and I think it just reflects the fact that the Finnish government, in all the ministries, places such great emphasis on innovation as a means to promote sustainable development and the 2030 agenda. Now, Assistant Secretary General Hochschild and I need to leave no later than 15-20 minutes past 3, at which time I will pass the mic to Aape. Without any further ado...
and then we solve all the problems.
Yes, yes, yes. The only introductory remark that I'd like to make has to do with the venue, Finland, for Slush. One of the many advantages, one of the many comparative advantages that Finland has as an incubator of innovation is the trust that we place in each other in this country. And that sense of trust breeds a capacity and a capability for us to collaborate together. That's a great strength of this country, and in particular, it allows for sectors, various sectors from various walks of life to sit down and work together. Now, what we just heard from Mr. Hochschild about the impact of new technologies, and especially social media, has a great potential in eroding trust. Social media is a great innovation, but it can erode trust, and it can erode our sharing of common facts and common truths. And a democracy cannot function if we do not share a basic set of facts and truths, because there's such a thing as a fact-based work. Now, I have a great pleasure of introducing President Tarja Halonen. She doesn't really need much of an introduction. Those of you who may not know, she served 2 terms, a total of 12 years as Finland's president. She has
Maximum time.
and she has a long and illustrious political career behind her. But that's not the only thing. She's also a great believer in the United Nations and its values. And I remember she, among other things, at the UN, she co-chaired the Commission on the human dimension of globalization, on the social dimension of globalization. And one of the things that I remember President Halonen having stressed at that time and since was decent work. And it's so important that we offer everybody a chance at decent work, because the lack of decent work and lack of work in general can have an extremely grave impact on the stability of societies, then breeding conflict and war. President Halonen, I have 2 questions for you.
I hope that they are the same I received, okay?
Yes, yes. I already mentioned that you have worked with the UN over an extended period of time, and you have seen a great many peace processes. What have you learned from this experience?
I think that it was already in the introduction very well. So we have the great stars of the mediation processes from the past, and we are very thankful for those men and also for some women. But the fact is that the crises have had a different kind of the character now. Of course, we need again, and still, the good mediators who are very often they are diplomats or the former diplomats and so on. But as it was described, nowadays the conflicts are different in that sense that earlier we thought that there is a quite clear difference between peace and war. I remember when we call this type of the conflicts we have today, we say that they are asymmetric or they are not traditional. But now, in that sense, we can say that these phenomena are the new normal, what's concerning the conflicts. So that very often they start in one country or even in the one part of the country, and then they spread, sometimes without we are noticing it, in the country and over the borders. And there are a lot of different kind of the actors and facts which are changing this system. And now I fully agree what was mentioned and what also the Secretary General Guterres very often says, that these are so difficult conflicts that it would be better to be more in, this disappeared I think, in preventive measures. And then we have, of course, you could much better, we have worked in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs a long time ago together, so you might be the better to tell what are the experiences from these old conflicts in a way, that which kind of the mediator is a good one. Now we have spread, of course, the role of the mediator. I have worked lately, for instance, with the women who have started working as mediators or want to become mediators. They have at least now, at this historical moment, they have very often a little bit different way to approach the system, and it might help to make, if not easier, but at least more lasting peace agreements. The same has been now lately also found in UN, that it's not only the parity, women and men, but also it has been the representation of the different kind of the minority groups. It can be also the different kind of civil leaders, religious leaders, and so on and so on. I always say that it doesn't make perhaps the process easier, but it might create more sustainable or stronger peace agreements, because a big part of those peace agreements, what has been lately done, so in 5 years they will be away. So I mean, in that way, it's hard work, just not working for long enough. But then what I would say that is that, and then I finish my monologue, is that we have also thought to see that why the conflicts have been born somewhere or created. Why? And man-made, of course, but there are also, it seems to be that the difference between, if not more sustainable, but resilient societies and the societies in conflict, that they might have a certain differences. And then we try not only to study the conflicts, but also those so-called stronger societies, or I would perhaps to say resilient societies, and then try to find that if we can move some of these features to those countries, societies which are in the conflict. That's one point. Another one is, of course, that we could, since the beginning, try to create more safety, better societies. But exactly like it's concerning the technical innovations, it is also with the social innovations. By the way, we have in Finland a wonderful book, 100 Social Innovations. It has been collected by Ilkka Taipale, who is a doctor, and I'm psychiatrist. And they are very funny Finnish social innovations, but some are quite good, like in many cookbooks. And so in that way, we can do this kind of the, how would I say, comparisons, that perhaps we can learn something about this. But I always say that in the same way, like in technical innovations, you can always use them either for good or for the bad. And so the values come very easily to this discussion. And my last moment is for that. So the peace negotiations is not something that we with the great stars can move or plant in one society or another. It's more what we think nowadays, and what I think that I support Secretary General very strongly, is that we have to learn since we are children to understand that even we have a different kind of the interests in the society. So we can negotiate and handle these issues. We can also learn to respect the others with different kind of opinions and to find which is common. And you can start it since the preschool education, or even from the home with the babies, and then it continues through the society. And in such kind of the persons, it's much easier to understand also how they, as a grown-up people, we do that. But I already hear what you are thinking. We cannot wait until we get again a new generation. That has been the mistake by the history. We always think that we need a new generation. No, always a majority part of the people are either trained with an old-fashioned education, or they have not learned these ideas early enough. So adult education in realistic way, what everybody learns in the marriages, be realistic also, but people can learn the new things, and you can also learn to accept that the other one might have a different kind of the ideas. And that way, now the new panel, advisory panel for the Secretary General Guterres, where I'm also a member, it's not only 50-50 with men and women, but many of us, we are more representing the ideas of the sustainable development than the traditional mediation side. And we try to learn something about this cooperation. I'm very guilty for this SDGs. I was co-chairing the Millennium Goals at UN. I was doing that what you mentioned, the social dimension of globalization in ILO. I have been also co-chairing the Rio process, which then led to this SDGs. But now I'm also carrying my responsibility, being both in this panel and in some other UN committees under the Secretary General.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, what are the strengths that you see Finland as having in this area?
Oh, yeah, a lot, and also with the other Nordic countries. I think that when we have learned with this Nordic welfare society, at least two things. One thing is that we quite sincerely, we believe that it is good for the society that every woman, every man, every boy, every girl could get as good starting point to develop as an individual, but also to give his or her input in the society. And that's why we have this healthcare, we have the social welfare, we have the education system, and so on. The second point, what is better for us, is of course that we have learned with this building work, construction work, we have learned that it's not always for you, for us, it is for the next generation, or in our generation for somebody else. And we know that it's not only the question, what I will benefit of this. It's also a question that how the society and the future generations will benefit. And it is for us because it's much better living in the society where somebody is not dying because of the lack of the food. I mean, it's for everybody. It's much more pleasant. It's much better. The society is much stronger. So I think in that way it is good. And I know that how much you would like to be the male feminist. So, so the question is, of course, that one of the good social innovations was that why to use only men or only women when you can use both the men and women in this concept? Because it's 50-50, it makes 100. Yeah.
Thank you. Indeed, the Nordic model has proven itself successful, not only in terms of strong institutions which can help with resilience, there is kind of resilience that you called for earlier, but also in terms of making people happy. Nordic countries rank at the very top in terms of the happiness of its population, and that's maybe because people tend to be happiest when they give back to each other.
Or at least we are less unhappy. or at least with the time when we are unhappy is shorter. Because I always thought before these researches, I thought that the happiness is the last thing what the real Finns want to be researched. And I always said that I don't know what's this happiness, that we only try to limit the time when we are unhappy, because whether you are happy or not, I mean, really the happiness is something very much coming from the heart of the individual. But, and we can a little bit help that he or she is not unhappy, but then he or she has to decide by herself or himself that that's fine.
Thank you. I will now turn back to Assistant Secretary General Hochschild. And you already pointed out that the UN Secretary General and the organization as a whole and the heads of the UN family, the funds, the programs, the specialized agencies, there's an increasing emphasis on innovation. And the organization is innovating to the outside. It's also innovating in its own work. Where do you think the organization can contribute most effectively, have the greatest impact when it comes to innovation and promoting innovation?
I think there are two areas. One is in the support to the global agenda. One of the great achievements of our times is the Sustainable Development Goals, the so-called 2030 agenda, thanks to also to the great contribution of the President. And another is the Paris Climate Agreement. But the sad truth is that on both those unique agendas, we're behind, and we need to do an awful lot of work to catch up. And we will not catch up without very significant innovation, without innovation in many ways, but including with the use of new technologies. So I think that is one chief way where innovation is vital in the work of the UN. And a second, I think, is in learning to understand the challenges that governments will be facing in the future. Challenges that I think the national institutions in Finland are grappling successfully with, but we have to acknowledge that in many countries, we have 20th century institutions trying to come to terms with, or not even trying yet, with 21st century challenges. And there needs a whole mindset change to address issues like what will artificial intelligence and robotics mean in my country for employment, and how am I going to deal with that? And what does that all mean for our education system? I think Finland has been asking those questions for a long time and come up with many answers, but I think many countries are only beginning or haven't even begun to answer those questions. And I think the UN innovating itself, becoming more aware of innovation, will also put it in a much better position to be of support to member states in helping them understand how to better come to terms and steer the formidable potential of new technology for good and contain or live with the disruptive impact, which is absolutely inevitable.
Thank you. The theme of this event is peace in Slush and Peacetech. And for those of you who might not know, this week will mark the formal opening in Espoo, here in Finland, of the UN Technology Innovation Laboratory, or UNTIL. And the Finnish UNTIL, or UNTIL, will have peace and security as one of its four focal areas. The other three being health, education, which is extremely important, and where Finland does have a great deal to offer, and circular economy, which is yet another area extremely important for sustainable development. Now, Peacetech is developing fast, as we heard from you, and I would like to commend the organizers for convening this event around such an important and growing topic. Where do you see the major opportunities when it comes to Peacetech in particular?
Well, we're very, very grateful to Finland for hosting and supporting this UN Innovation Lab, and we think Finland is an ideal environment to pursue those areas, both because of the formidable culture of innovation and also this unique cooperation between private and public sector. And I think we can disseminate the lessons across the world. I think Peacetech is in its infancy. I think the UN has started using new tech in the prevention agenda, in peacekeeping, but I think there's potential to do much more. I think we need to learn better how to use big data to trace emerging conflicts, and to understand better not only how we can understand better where conflict is emerging, but how we can intervene. Because I think the challenge of early warning has diminished. The challenge today is early action. And I think we're still not clear of what sort of interventions are most effective in what contexts. So I think that's an area where Peacetech could very easily focus. The issue that was mentioned about making peace processes more inclusive, using new tech to do that, to get groups involved, youth, women, indigenous groups who are often marginalized, but whose participation and activism is critical, as the President suggested, to making sure peace is durable. I think that's another area where there's a challenge. And looking at this very thorny problem of how we handle social media. What are the solutions without curtailing free speech, without introducing censorship? How can we come to terms with social media that is more and more being used as a tool for hate and division, as opposed to being informed by the values that we would want to see represented in it? And I think there are possible technological solutions where further reflection on Peacetech could be useful. So I think those are some of the areas where it would be very helpful to focus the work of the Innovation Lab.
Thank you.
I'm too, how could I say? Because now the system analysis is one of those areas. So I do hope so that you will be interested. Because concerning also the sustainable development goals. So if I make a very simple comparison, when we have the Millennium Goals, so that was a diplomatic surprise, as you remember. It was not really very broadly discussed and so on. And then everybody said that when we start to do after a few years after the Millennium Goals, that now when we make a next step with an SDGs, so it has to be also based on the very broad democratic process. Whoa, yeah, we did it. But it was really difficult to handle because that few thousand people were all the time with an mailing or different kind of ideas, and they were very, very stubborn to activate their own ideas. But how to make it one process, it was extremely difficult. And that's why we have the Rio, we have some other meetings first, and then we have the Rio, and then after that it was a long diplomatic process, then to shrink it, or how could I really say, to do it more clear package of the 17 goals. And then when I was also involved in the implementation, so I said, now the difference is that we welcome all the presidents and prime ministers to be very committed idea. But what we noticed since the beginning is that even they and the parliaments, we do their utmost, what they don't do always. And so this is not enough. We do need a business community, we need an academia, we need an NGOs, we need different kind of actors of the society in order to make it fast enough, this movement. And now I think that now this is in system analysis, totally different issue. When you cannot command, you cannot give the orders, or you have not a democratic representation how you do this process. So how to do it? And I think, this is just my own thinking, I think that perhaps the nearest is to see the biology, the plants, environments in that way, or the physics or chemistry, and to think that how the systems are working, which are these important facts which can change the system without giving the commanding orders for the process. And this is now more or less also the how could I say, more visible problem of all kind of the societies, how to move this. And I think that one idea what we have was this social media. And I think that we were as innocent as were those people with the Gutenberg that who thought that now it starts the new era of the everything good. Yeah, they are, both the Gutenberger and also the social media can be powerful weapons, because people need both the brains and the heart in order to make innovations. The brains are not enough. And that's why we now try to find which kind of the system analysis could be helpful. And don't say to me that I'm the devil's advocate. I'm the former lawyer, of course, but still. So I think that it's a question that it has been used for the bad, for the evil purposes already a long time. Our ideas is now how you can put also this kind of the good ideas, humanitarian ideas, the socially positive ideas, and how to awake people to see by their brains and their heart what they should do. And so these are the very excellent systems. But anybody interested in system analysis, welcome.
Thank you. And as both of you mentioned, new technologies, any technology for that matter, can be used for both the good and the bad. And in a way, these technologies are out of the bottle. The genie is out of the bottle. And Mr. Assistant Secretary, you mentioned lethal autonomous weapons systems. It's no longer going to be possible to ban these technologies. So one has to address the uses of these technologies, which we still, if the political will is there, can be addressed. Now, next, Maria, you are the director of SaferGlobe, and who would be a better person to answer the next question, which is, what is, succinctly, what is Peacetech, and where do you see the greatest potential for Peacetech?
So Peacetech, as I said in my original opening statement, is technology that aims to reduce violence and the need for violence. It is not feel-good technology. So if I, for example, give my neighbor a flower through an app, that's not Peacetech unless my neighbor happens to be a part of some violent gang and I'm in fear, and giving that flower enables me to engage in dialogue with my neighbor. Similarly, it's not security technology, because security technology aims to reduce violence often, but doesn't deal with the need for violence. With peace technology, we're looking often at preventative technologies. So what would be, well, actually, Assistant General Hochschild already gave some good examples of potential peace technology, but I'll give you some more. On a kind of a strategic level, we're looking at tools to help with analysis of conflict mapping, stakeholder mapping, things that help us understand what's going on in very complex environments. And the environments are extremely complex. We may have had 10 conflicting parties yesterday, 15 tomorrow, and somehow that needs to be taken into consideration in planning. There's also potential for evaluation and impact. Then there are tools that are specifically aimed at peacekeepers or peace builders. These are tools that can be used to enhance skill sets. So for example, now there's a lot of gaming aimed at teaching peacekeepers how to deal with different scenarios, mediation and negotiation tools, but also apps that let peacekeepers understand what's going on in their environments. But then there are also two other strands. One is very much community focused. So community focused Peacetech usually stems from small startup communities that want to change the way that business is being done, that technology is being innovated. Often the businesses or the startups themselves, in the way that they operate, they try to bridge divisions. And then there are also tools for states. Some conflict drivers, for example, land ownership, they require tools for the states to deal with things like figuring out who owns land, who is a local, who is not a local. And then there's the kind of, I would say, the high-tech potential, which is that we have a lot of new technologies coming. We have certainly artificial intelligence, blockchain, and there are interesting ideas to do with how technology and these new technologies could be used. I would like to point out that very typically in conflict environments, we are dealing with very young populations. So often conflict changes countries so that the middle age in a country can easily be 18, or the average life expectancy can be somewhere in the 30s or the 40s. And this means that these societies have an amazing potential for change, but also that there are a large group of young people who are interested and enthusiastic about developing technologies and changing their own societies. I think the last question was about what do we need to develop peace technologies. We need to have very broad collaboration. There is danger in peace technology that when we try to do good, that we actually end up doing bad. And so to prevent that, we need large collaboration and a lot of different kinds of understandings.
Thank you. And secondly, and this is something that has been already touched upon somewhat, the unique characteristics of Finland. Where do you see them? Why is Finland a fertile breeding ground for Peacetech?
Well, I think the first reason is pretty obvious. Finland has a very strong tradition and interest in peace, and we have a very strong tradition and interest in technology. So you combine kind of two of our main interests together, and then you have peace technology. But the other reasons include things like smaller hierarchies and fewer silos than elsewhere. I'm especially happy to be looking at this audience where I know that there are members from the Finnish armed forces and startup communities. Actually, you're sitting right next to each other. And that's something very special. It's really very difficult to achieve that kind of synergies and that kind of collaboration elsewhere. Then additionally, there is expertise, but also this culture of experimentation. So that the startup scene has given us all a kind of a freedom to innovate, and that can lead potentially to really good solutions.
Thank you. And I would add one thing. Finns are no longer as afraid as we used to be to fail. Because to innovate, you have to accept that you will end up failing. So,
and if I may, one more point about that, which is that with peace technology, it is incredibly important to have humility and to be able to listen especially if we are dealing with fragile contexts. So the local understandings need to be brought into the development of technology as well.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Mr. Hochschild and I need to depart. I'm going to make the first question to Mr. Tarjanne, who is Artturi Tarjanne, is a venture capitalist. He's a business angel, and he's also a successful entrepreneur in his own right. So I'd like you, while I'm handing the mic over to Aape, I'd like you to answer the question: what role will there be for venture capital and business angels in the area of Peacetech? And by the way, one of my first observations during these past couple of weeks has been that there's a tremendous amount of social responsibility among Finnish business angels, Finnish entrepreneurs, both big and small. And perhaps you'd like to tell if you think that whether Finnish entrepreneurs are more socially responsible than entrepreneurs on average. But unfortunately, we will not be here with Mr. Hochschild to listen, but I will be told what you answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very honored, first of all, to be here today. And yes, I make a confession, I'm a capitalist, venture capitalist. Venture capital is a very, very efficient method to create growth, to create jobs, to create innovation.
Welcome, come closer.
Yeah.
Thank you. So there have been a huge amount of studies made, academic studies, that is one of the most efficient ways to create growth and innovation. And it is also a very equal opportunity type of tool. I mean that when we invest in startups, we don't look rich people, we don't look for people with certain type of background. We invest only people we believe in. They have the right attitude and the skills. Everybody can join if just have the attitude and the skills, which, by the way, underlines the importance of education mentioned already today many times here. And venture capital is quite often used also in developing countries to create more stable economy, which means, again, it might mean less wars, less conflicts when there is more wealth to begin with. And by the way, the funds we invest, the typical source of the funds, the biggest source of funds is coming from the pension funds. So when we make money, the returns goes to our pensions. So I think venture capital, although it's a capitalist thing, it has many very positive things to develop a strong equal society. So how it could be used for Peacetech, or could it be used for Peacetech? Well, there have been developed methods like impact investments where the venture funds are not only measured by the returns on euros or dollars, but also the impact, social economical impact on the environment. But to must say, the truth is that there is still a lot to be done in that area to really make a big impact and grand scale. Majority of the venture capital is still pretty much measured only on returning the assets back to the investors. But right now, Next Ventures is looking to, that's the fund I'm working today, Next Ventures is looking for a new fund, and to be honest, majority of the potential investors to our funds are asking us what are our socioeconomic impact kind of KPIs, and do we have methods to measure our impact from that perspective. So it's coming to the venture capital as well. But in reality, the venture capital in grand scale, it is just like technology. It is not good or it's not bad. It's just an efficient method, and it can be used for good and bad as well.
Okay. Thank you. So, hi, I'm Aape. I'm the new ambassador. One of the reasons behind Splush is looking back at the successes of the Finnish technology industry in creating mechanisms such as open source or being involved in the creation of mobile internet. And we think, as participants of this ecosystem, we think that Finland should and could be, actually should be, a global leader in creating services and companies that could be used both as a non-profit mechanism for the humanitarian parts, but also in creating the societies that are required. An example from Funzi when we work in Iraq. A part of the things that I learned during that process was that the size of the private sector in Iraq of the whole gross domestic production is less than 2%. Now, if we believe, and if there is great belief in seeing that the private industry driving the change of a better society with more human values and with better transparency and prosperity for all, how could we make that part, the private sector, grow faster? Could technology, like business development technology, could it also be a part of the peace technology? Maria, how do you see this?
Well, let me first gather my thoughts. One of the very crucial, especially when there's long-term conflict, when we look at 10, 20, 30 years of conflict, that conflict has changed the economic structure of the state thoroughly. So what typically happens is, as the conflict progresses, legal business basically leaves or dies, and it's replaced. There is plenty of business activity in conflict and plenty of people who benefit financially from conflict. But typically we are looking then at organized crime, either black or gray economy. So to transform a conflicting society into a peaceful society, actually having jobs, creating jobs, having a functional private sector is absolutely vital. Without the functioning private sector, what we do then as peacekeepers is that we, for example, train people. We give education and training, but if they don't have jobs to go to, the training it doesn't have much of an impact. But fragile contexts are also incredibly difficult for companies and for businesses because they don't have the legal structures that functioning businesses typically would need. So it requires a kind of a pioneering spirit, which you may have, but also a very thorough understanding of the do no harm concept. So we're talking about conflict sensitivity. So your business doesn't inadvertently make the conflict worse. And it's very easy to do so, just for example, by accidentally employing people from one minority but not another. And then all of a sudden you may be creating more conflict.
Artturi, how many Peacetech companies have you invested in?
Well, I have myself, or Nexit Fund, we have gone through some 10, 12, 15,000 startups to begin with.
Let's repeat that number. 10 to 15,000.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I've been in venture capital for 20 years now. And the first thing is that when we start studying a company and we then make an investment in few of those, we've made a couple of dozen investments, the story changes and changes during the trip always. There have been all kind of, mostly communication, social media, all kind of investments companies. All those companies has developed technology which can be used and will be used for good and bad. None of them being designed to be really peace technology as such, but I'm quite confident that most of them being used for good and bad as well. And that's a bit of a the problem here that the nature of technology is such, as mentioned here already. It's not, technology is not good. Technology is not bad. It's just technology. It's the people and the intentions there behind which is the problem. I'll give an example of a social media type of a app. Was it in Syria where it kind of was helping people to find safe places, safety homes. And the outcome was that it was used to the enemies to find those people giving safety homes, and those homes were attacked. So it's very tricky and it's a very complex thing. It's like the, let's say, data security business is very difficult, and quite easily, if you create something in data security, you might end up giving a nice place to get all the secrets easily to the evil people. It's the same problem with the peace technology, that it's quite often things go upside down if you are not careful. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah, I think that I have one example concerning the social media. When Finland celebrated 100 years independence, and so the government government of Finland, they had a competition that how to make our country even better, more democratic, and so one of the ideas was how to help the people who have become in media, social media, in concerning all kind of harassment and so on, and so they didn't win the competition, but these young ladies, lawyers, quite many, that they created a company who got, I think, the second prize, and I have supported them a little bit, and you can see it in my twittering, in my twittering. So the idea how they created it was very good concerning this system. They have already gotten, I think, registered so that I can tell it here. So it's a system how the people who think that they have been, how could I, mistreated in that way, so that they have to answer by themselves, these so-called victims, to these questions. And after, when they have answered these questions, so this intelligence, artificial intelligence machine will then to tell whether they need judicial help or not. So comes the lawyers to help. And what is the good side of this is, of course, that the person, him or herself, has to think what he or she has made, and then to be part to analyze the whole problem. And now they have succeeded pretty well already, and we have supported them in social media, and we have got some positive mannequins for this system. But when I started to support them, I thought that this is good for Finland or Nordic countries, or even most of the countries, but then I thought that this system is perhaps not that good in authoritarian regime. And I said it to them, and then they said, yeah, they know, but it might be also that these governments have even more effective ways already to earn. So it's also, and vice versa, when we see the systems, how the authoritarian governments are doing, we can also learn from that evil things, that how to turn it backwards, how to do it. So I think that in that way, what I said concerning the system analysis, but also with other systems, we are speaking about hybrid warfare already now, and so I think that Finland is well known, and I have tried to work for that, that we could become also awarded on that. So we know the systems pretty well, but it's good to see that all these systems, the electricity, oil, gas, also the security, with IT, and so it can be used in both ways. And this is the idea of this is a very old one. If you read the old stories about from the medieval time, they used exactly the same system in the weapons they had in those days, whether it was different kind of the diseases or propaganda, or they stopped the food delivering or something like that. But we use it in a little bit more effective ways, but it's exactly the same system. And so I always say study the enemy too, and see that how they have catch the idea. And you can turn it to the good one also. Not only so that we do the technical systems and they will take it, but we can also, the people in the army, you might say that it's Swastabak oil, the contra spy agents, so that they can be used in different ways. And so I say that when I'm always speaking about the sustainable development, so the system, what we are creating now for instance, in energy or new type of the energy, renewable energy. So don't forget that it's also politics in that. That if you do a very decentralized system for energy with solar and so you can imagine that they can be a beautiful paradise type of the village in Africa, which is just independent from all those authoritarian dictators, if so. But vice versa. It can be also such kind of the very, very bad situation for the women or the girls or even for the men. And so you cannot stop it because they are totally independent. So when you are create the energy system, think also that both at the local level and also at the state level or in international level, some other people think that how much we will give the power, political power for them. How much, also in Finland, for instance, with the renewable energy, that how much you have to be anyway, how could I say, credited to the big companies, or you can be independent. And that makes very interesting when you listen then, for instance, it's this question of the energy. It's also concerning all these other systems. I was listening to you, but I think it's a totally different world. I'm sitting in the Reuters side, so I know the big media system. I mean, the director, but otherwise, I have been more in other side, and so for instance, I work very hard nowadays. All these questions. My own office is 3 persons. So I mean that. When you have here 500 or what I heard already. So it is possible also to create the networks so that you keep yourself a very small one. Of course, all money is welcome, but I mean in such a way that it's a different techniques. So also for those of you who are working with the small ones with making the networks can be very effective.
Okay, I think that the I was just about to say that it's time to move to concluding remarks from the members of the panel and then open the floor to some questions from the audience. So, Maria, please.
Thank you. I'd just like to say 2 little things to conclude. One is that peace technology doesn't necessarily need to be in fragile contexts. We can certainly use peace technology in Finland as well. We can increase peacefulness. Perfect peace. We live in a very stable country. We're very fortunate to live in a very stable so far. But peace is not a given. So we can consistently strive towards becoming more stable, more peaceful. And then the second thing I wanted to say, now I have Aape staring at me, so it's quite difficult but the second thing I wanted to say is that in the very worst context, the problems are extremely we're looking at messes of conflicts, which are tangled messes of complex. So on the one hand, it may seem like these are impossible challenges to face, and they indeed are. But when we're talking about the people in the most fragile, the worst situations, even if we're able to create tiny bit of change, sometimes that tiny bit of change can be all that's needed. So I would like to sort of say, kind of give a slightly more hopeful message in the end, is that sometimes in the worst situations, a little bit of hope and some kind of a tool is all you need to make a huge difference.
Artturi.
Well, just a short remark. I was asked earlier about Finland, and I forgot to answer it. How Finland and how do we work here? And one note is that we've been investing in all over the world, also a lot in Silicon Valley. And I would say that Finland stands out, especially the gaming industry in Finland stands out with the people sharing culture, and the small startups really willing to help each other, which is also a very important thing we can see between the startups and technology companies, and probably also with the peace technology companies.
Madam President.
Just, I have spoken already too much, but saying that I'm today the chair of the board of the Helsinki University. We are also in Slush, and we are also interested in all kind of the new ideas. We try also to make this kind of the networking much easier by trying to encourage the faculties to work more together, and also to get such kind of the forums where the person studying from certain subject could also get the items from the different faculties, so that we try to create also the horizontal cooperation, and help us to make a success in this. I think so that we have all the possibilities to work with this, and we can meet also tomorrow in Slush.
Madam President, do you still have time for one question from the
Oh,
audience?
many.
Okay. Nina, you have been designated the first question. Do we have a... Where is the... And Nina's there. This is a Finnish innovation. Let's see how it works. You can throw the mic, said the inventors.
Yeah. Ah, it's that one. Yeah.
Hi.
That's nice.
Thanks so much. I want to ask from President Halonen. Yes, we now talked a lot about technology, but it is us humans that use it and make decisions on it, and it's our responsibility to use it for good. You've done a long career as a human rights advocate and as a trailblazer for gender equality. If you had some words of wisdom or advice that you could give us as a room of people coming from all walks of life, from NGOs, from businesses, from the ministries, what would be sort of the key things you would want us to consider when going forward with this peace technology solutions?
I think that it's same like in the politics, so that many of you don't remember, but your mothers and fathers might remember the time when, for instance, the idea to get a woman as a president was a very new one. I remember when my father said when the Undersecretary for UN, Sipilä, first time said that I could be the candidating a president. My father said, woman? But then after a few seconds he said, yeah, why not? And so I think that be open for the new ideas. And I have said it also for the men's side, for the boys very often, that it doesn't mean that you should do like your father or your grandfather, that you have also unlimited possibilities for such kind of the areas where the women and girls have been now dominating. It doesn't mean that you are better or they are better or worse. It's just a question that at this historical moment, whatever we say concerning the gender equality, the background concerning the education and family approach and everything, without that we notice it, it's different for the boys and men. They might have also slight differences. I always try to make men happier when I say that you have less bridge between the left and right part of the brains, but you are very happy with that, and you can be different. but then let's be more serious. So I mean that just be open for the new ideas. They might be first crazy, and they can be crazy, but you can also develop them. So open mind for the networking. And then, of course, try to find such kind of the persons who are interested also with their money, because even I have worked almost without money, and as I said, not voluntary, but I have too. But then you much younger ones, you need more capital in order to create a network, and try to find it also here. You are listening very carefully what we are speaking, but don't go to the elevator, to the lifts before you have introduced yourself to somebody you don't know yet.
Thank you.
Thank
Other
you.
questions?
Here?
I have one.
Here you go.
Thank you. Does that? Yeah. Okay. It is a more of a question for the venture capitalists in the room. As an ex-venture capitalist, now an impact venture founder, all, in my experience, that all boils down to consumer and traction. In your opinion, how do you see the consumers going for the impact ventures? For example, the food startup that might value, it's the consumers that might value more and cheaper, and the consumers that value that has impact to the environment. So how do you see the consumer angle playing in this as a democratic way of buying?
Excuse me, could you please introduce yourselves when you pose questions? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. My name is Hassan. I'm the founder of Kolev, coming from Cyprus. Thank you.
Also, winner of this year's Startups for Peace competition. That's why I was whispering, because he has just won.
Is this advertising? Is this like commercial thing
Okay.
now?
Well, it
is very cool. I'll love to take it. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, I suppose I'm the one to answer here. First of all, venture capital, if we go back to the history of venture capital, it was more of a B2B, business-to-business investment. Lately, the business-to-consumer investment has taken more and more role, where the internet is one of the reasons, and the app stores and others, which made it very easy to create new phenomena and reach millions and billions of people very fast. But that's fairly new phenomenon, and even right now, if we look what we are doing, we are more focused on B2B investments as such, not that much to B2C investments. But of course, when you are in a B2C game, in B2C business, you are trying to create something which kind of creates a lot of attention and interest among the consumers. And which means that consumers are interested in good and bad things. Consumers are interested in drugs. Consumers are interested in good things as well. So I think it's the biggest thing there is that because of the internet, because of the modern society we have here, even if we have a fairly small group of people interested on your opportunity offer, you can still easily reach it because of the modern technology, which make the environment very rich, which means that even if there is a small group of need of certain type of peace technology, you can more easily reach it because of the modern technology. And that would be kind of my short take here.
Yeah, I would also to add that consumers are interested. They are also interested in when they are investing their small capital to the business. And so the problem is, of course, that it's not easy to tell what's good and bad, as we have discussed here. And one part of that, a very, very, how could I say, clear part is that the systems are not so transparent. And if the consumer, for instance, this is broader than the peace side, if they want to know that is this coffee or bananas or textile good. So with coffee and banana, we succeeded to break the old monopoles and to get the fair trade. And that's all right. Now also these others in the same competition, they have also started to get the different kind of the marks to tell that they try also to obey the orders and so on. But then, for instance, in metal industry, it's almost impossible to know that which kind of the metal is it good or bad in such about the background. And so all such kind of the people who are interested to do that, how to get the more transparent background histories for the materials and the services and so on, I think the consumers will welcome them. But consumer cannot go with an internet in the shopping center and see that is it today the day when I will buy more for the gender equality or for the protection of the nature or so on. And so also such kind of the combinations what EU is now planning to do, that you could more or less to get vague frames in that way that which kind of information is available. Even that is good to know, that whether it's available or whether it's not. But then coming also for peace, I almost think so that we know the big ideas and big frames, and we try to speak for the UN and for the other big global organizations, but also through what you said, especially that people are more and more interested in such kind of the small scale project where they can see practically what's going on. And that's why all kind of the cows and goose and chickens and the small scale schools and so are very, very popular in Finland. So that people are really ready to give the money, not only in Christmas time, but also in other time, if they know that this is the practical consequence, good consequence. And in that way, I think that there is plenty of room also for the smaller ideas and smaller projects, but also see that how they could grow bigger ones, and what's the benefit of the Nordic system than if it's a big system with a quite small population, where, of course, being, as they know my background, social democrat, I think that it's good to have the welfare system with the public education, health and social system, but also the competition. Okay.
Yes, there's one thing that I have to, there's cold sparkling wine. It's bubbly, and there's also some non-alcoholic drinks. So I think that instead of continuing this discussion in this wider debate, I do suggest that we take, if I may conclude the panel by saying, peace, technology, comes to the humans, the people who use it.
Yep.
It's up to the people to decide whether technology is good or bad for peace. So it's up to us to develop such mechanisms. The three major things that you, Madam President, already at one of your most famous conferences speeches said, you said that there's three things that are more important. It's the education, then it's the education. What was the third one? I think it was education.
Yes.
Using new technology to deliver education and learning so that people change their behavioral patterns is a core essential component in building a better world for all of us. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Artturi, especially for the long, I remember us meeting in the late 80s, and you look the same and you sound the same.
Lovely.
He's a time machine.
Sustainable.
Yes, sustainable development goal. Thank you, dear audience, and especially thank you for Futurize. The work that Futurize crew, Tuomas, and everybody involved, thank you very much. Thank you also for everybody else being here and watching us, hopefully online. And now we have some small presents, but now it's up to you to walk and enjoy the beverages and some snacks there.
And remember to introduce yourself.
Introduce yourselves. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.